Content warning. This video is not made for kids. It contains fictional depictions of mental illness, fictional violence, and fictional abuse. The fictional characters in this story are heavily afflicted by the things that I have spelled out to you, and some of the inner monologue seems to suggest that they should be getting hurt like this, but that is absolutely not the case. Me portraying this abuse or mental illness is meant to show the audience how the illness or abuse feels inside of the mind of the afflicted person, so they can sympathize and maybe stop themselves from following a similar pattern in the future. Be careful if you're easily triggered. You're most likely about to enter the mind of someone who is heavily afflicted by illness and abuse. Viewer discretion is advised.
The only movement from Bonnie was the slow rise and fall of his sides, keeping each breath carefully balanced so as not to disturb the person holding him. He was even keeping his eyes closed, not wanting the LED lights inside of them to cause enough of a shift to stir Freddy out of his sleep. His newly repaired body was curled up in Freddy's bed, the big bear's strong arms keeping him tucked against his thickly furred body, just as they had been every night since being reunited. The safety that Freddy's presence provided was keeping Bonnie submerged in a state of peace, but even that hadn't been enough to keep him asleep until the morning. Freddy, however, was giving off quiet snores that rumbled through his chest, completely knocked out. Every single night, Freddy tried his best to fight off Bonnie's insomnia. He had told him again and again that every time Bonnie wakes up too early, he's supposed to get Freddy up as well so that they can start the process over and lower him back into sleep. And near the beginning, Bonnie had done just that, so desperate with exhaustion that he was willing to do anything just to get a few more hours of shut-eye. But when he saw the same exhaustion begin to leak onto Freddy, he became more hesitant. It was like the fatigue was spreading to Freddy like a virus, slowly infecting every cell in his body and dragging him down to the depths that Bonnie was suffering. The bags beneath Freddy's eyes darkened with each passing night, his paws getting shaky and his footing becoming unsteady. His eyes kept twitching like swarms of gnats were infesting them, even his voice showing the wear and tear of how many hours of sleep he had lost trying to help Bonnie. Seeing him like that was unbearable. So Bonnie kept his eyes shut, his face pressed against Freddy's chest, listening to each deep breath as it flowed in and out. The tiny clicks and whirs and thumps of his inner workings fluttered through Bonnie's ears rhythmically, continuously encouraging him to stay motionless and quiet, to not move a single piston or spring, to at least give back a little of what Freddy had been giving to him. Bonnie tried his best not to wince as the throbbing in his head intensified. It felt like his processor had been liquefied into mush and was now being sloshed back and forth like a bowl filled of dead fish. The pain kept jabbing behind his eyes and the sides of his temples, like leeches had formed a ring around his scalp in some hideous crown. But no matter how utterly exhausted he was, he just could not get back to sleep. And, of course, worrying about not being able to go back to sleep created a sort of feedback loop, making it even more difficult to relax, watching the time tick past and counting up how few opportunities he had to get some more sleep before the morning, worrying about how much the next day was going to hurt if he didn't drift off right now, that the same exact thing had happened yesterday, the day before yesterday, the entire week before yesterday, and it was going to repeat itself again tomorrow and tomorrow's tomorrow and tomorrow's tomorrow, forever until the end of his life. Bonnie's throat contracted and he fought down the tension crawling up his back. Don't cry. It'll make the headache worse. It'll make Freddy wake up and then they'll both be tired. They'll both be reminded how much this isn't working. It isn't working. No, stop freaking out. Stop thinking about it. Stay still. Self-hatred scorched him alive. Stupid, useless hunk of junk. No wonder they abandoned you. Look at how tired he is. You're doing this to him. You're more trouble than you're worth. It was such an odd paradox for Bonnie to be going through therapy while still having these sort of thoughts haunting him. He could pick up on how wrong those words were, that he wasn't supposed to think that way. He was supposed to remain calm and let the words slide by and become unaffected. And still, Bonnie was hurt by them. He knew the thoughts were wrong, he knew the thoughts were bad, but that didn't stop them. Utter helplessness began to worm its way through it all, making it harder and harder to stay still, the trembling in his breaths and the tension in his paws rising. Freddy made a noise. No, calm down, just stop. It was too late. Freddy was spurred into wakefulness, his whole body shifting around as he readjusted his hold on Bonnie, turning his eyes down to him. Oh, hey, it's okay, I'm here. Freddy automatically began to say, a reflex at this point. Bonnie buried his face into Freddy's chest, finally allowing himself to let out all of the whimpering sobs he had been holding at bay. Freddy rubbed his back, hushing him gently and encouraging him that it was okay, he could let it out to just breathe and settle down. The shame coursing through Bonnie made it difficult to pull himself back together, but he forced himself to do it for Freddy. The less Bonnie cried, the less Freddy would stress about his well-being. Here, maybe we can readjust. Do you want to lie on your other side? Freddy suggested. Bonnie sniffled and nodded. The two of them switched over to the other's part of the bed, with Bonnie lying on his left side and Freddy lying on his right. Freddy rearranged their pillows and pulled their blanket up to their shoulders, scooping Bonnie back into the embrace that they had been defaulting into for quite a while now. All of the movement helped remind Bonnie of the state of his new body. It was still a wonder to him how his joints could move smoothly without catching on chunks of rust, how not a single inch of him burned anymore, how his fur was full and clean once again. It didn't exactly reflect how he felt on the inside, but at the very least it helped him feel a little better. When his eyes drooped closed, he found that they were too sticky to be opened again. As usual, Freddy began to talk about some of the song lyrics that they were going to be adapting for the big stage, not really trying to pass information to him, but instead just trying to keep his mind off of things. And it helped. It really did help for Freddy to stay up with him like this, even though Bonnie felt guilty for it. Things began to get slower and heavier, his thoughts warbling against Freddy's rambles, his deep voice tingling in his ears as he sank deeper and deeper into the mattress. Things were dark for a while. And at first, it wasn't an upsetting darkness. It wasn't full of scrabbling or scraping or cold fingers. It was warm, it was close to his protector, and it was peaceful. Briefly. Then, just as it always did, the nightmares began to crawl back to life, like cockroaches closing in on a dying rat. Lying down, face up, not on his side like he had last remembered. His eyelids were dragged open by gravity, pupils staring upwards at nothing but pitch blackness. All of the light down here had died a long time ago. It wasn't a darkness that could be adjusted to. It wasn't a darkness that could be tamed with enough time to get used to it. It was complete, absolute darkness, the type that would only be found inside of a black hole. And that darkness was hungry. There were scrabbling noises beneath him, all around him, desperate for spare parts. All it would take to escape the scrapped staff bots would be to sit up, to wade his way over to the surrounding platform and pull himself out. But his body would not listen to a single thing that he said, even though it was actively being picked apart. He couldn't twitch his fingers, he couldn't adjust his ankle or click a gear or tense a single piston in his entire body. His facial expression could not change, his mouth could not close, even his eyes could not budge a single millimeter. The horror and dread and despair crashed down onto him like a collapsing cave, his thoughts shrieking and screaming inside of his head, but his body did not react. The concept of living in this eternal hell was breaking his mind into a million tiny pieces, but he couldn't do so much as breathe a little faster. He was trapped inside of his paralyzed body, with no hope that it would ever end. Being put back into this state made the memories of his rediscovery blurrier, less valid. Scenes like this happened so much in the scrap dump. He would pass out from his own exhaustion and have a hopeful dream all about how the procedure was a success and he was surrounded by his family and they invited him back into their life and best of all, back into Freddy's life. Only for him to wake up back in the dump and realize that it hadn't been real. His rediscovery must have been the same, he began to reason with a rising anguish. What if his rediscovery had been another one of those dreams? What if this instead was reality? This was reality and it was never going to change. He was never going to escape. He had been foolish to think that he would ever actually get out of here. The lights clanked on. Bonnie could not flinch or squint, the white blaze needling directly into his unmoving pupils. The staff bots scrambled around, trying to hide their ruined eyes from the light, shifting beneath him as they dug further down beneath the pieces of scrap metal they lied beside. Since his pupils couldn't contract, he was unable to properly see what was happening up there, the pain making him want to twist away and cover his face. But Bonnie didn't need to see what was going on to know what this meant. Distant voices echoed down the shaft, his only clue that there was anything going on up there besides the new light. There was the scraping of metal, the rolling of wheels, approaching the edge. Even though he had already tried this thousands of times, Bonnie tried to gather up all of the pain and desperation and suffering inside of him, pulling all of it together and pushing that force into making himself move. Help! He tried to form the words in his head, to force them into his voice box. Help, help, I'm still alive down here. Get me out, get me out. He was practically screaming inside of his own skull, fighting with all of his willpower to make a sound, even a tiny squeak, anything to get their attention. But nothing happened. His body did not respond. He remained trapped as the people above upturned the garbage bin. Scrap metal began to rain down onto him. Chipped screws, bent bolts, tools that no longer worked, sheets of unusable aluminum or old iron. All of it struck the scrap dump with loud clanks and clicks. A pole landed on his knee, the numbness of his paralysis saving him from the pain the impact must have caused. A gear dented his forehead, the clang vibrating through his metallic skull. Like crocodiles in a riverbed, the staff bots that still had enough battery percentage to move began to scramble for their right to claim the new parts, beating each other back and fighting over seemingly insignificant little pieces, not caring that Bonnie couldn't join them. But at least the new parts distracted them from him. The lights shut off. The employees dragged the bin away and locked the door behind them. Bonnie just kept ramming up against the inside of his own mind, screaming and screaming after them and yet not making a sound, lying there face up as the darkness consumed him once more. Bonnie, wake up! It's okay, I'm here! Bonnie was lying on his side now, his body spasming in Freddy's hold, the scream that he had been struggling to push out now released from his parted jaws. You're safe, Freddy repeated to him, nuzzling his forehead. I'm here, Bonnie, I'm here. It wasn't real. You're not back there. Bonnie leaned into his partner, letting out a shaky exhale. Right, of course. He was still safe. He would always be safe, here in Freddy's arms. All right, Bonnie, I've made a plan, Whitson announced, and I promise, this plan is going to work much, much better than the last one. It was now several hours later, only a short few minutes since Bonnie and Freddy had woken up for the last time and decided that it was late enough in the morning that they should get up and get going with the day. Whitson always arrived early and waited outside for them to decide when to get up. Once they opened up the door and waved for him to come in, he had put his book away and taken up a pile of stapled papers that he was now holding before them like he was about to slip into a class presentation. Freddy and Bonnie were seated side by side on the bed, yawning and continuously having to remind themselves to drag their eyes back open and pay attention. Whitson's hands were just as pale as the papers that he held, his dark violet jacket once again tied around his waist with the sleeves of his sunny yellow shirt rolled up past the elbows. He was keeping any discouragement out of his expression, his stance a little straighter, like he was hoping to compensate for the weight dragging on Bonnie and Freddy's shoulders. "I'm assuming that you can probably put together what separation anxiety is," Whitson said. Bonnie shifted in discomfort, shrugging. He became very aware of how closely he was tucked against Freddy's side, the way that their arms were twined together until their palms met. "So, what do you think separation anxiety is?" Whitson asked. Bonnie was used to therapy sessions like this. Before this, Whitson had been coaching him on how to calm down from panic attacks, finding ways to help out with the insomnia, how to escape flashbacks, just trying to get control of the most destructive parts of his PTSD. But this was a little new. Bonnie mumbled at the floor. "Being scared of being alone?" "Yes, that's basically it," Whitson said lightly. "Now, separation anxiety is not something that you need to be ashamed of. Just like all of your other symptoms, it's just a part of your PTSD, and it makes sense that it would develop, judging by what you went through. Having separation anxiety after an experience like that is very normal, but since it's hurting you, I want to try and find a way to bring it down." Already, Bonnie was starting to feel nauseous. There had been so much that he had been confronting in the last few weeks, and the idea of taking on something else always made him want to squirm away. "Does that sound right?" Bonnie shrugged and nodded. "Okay." Whitson gestured to the two of them, saying, "Clearly, a lot of your separation anxiety has to do with you and Freddy. Again, this makes sense, since he's your partner and he cares about you very, very much. But being unable to function without him is unhealthy, both for him and for you. Does that make sense?" Ripples of resistance began to rise in the back of Bonnie's head. His hands shook as he tightened them around Freddy's paw. "Yes," he forced out. "So, I think that today," Whitson said slowly, keeping his lanky arms tucked around the folded papers, "we're going to try and spend some time without him." Just that thought made icy dread plummet inside of his gut, his chest beginning to heave with quickening breaths, squeezing Freddy's paw so hard he was starting to lose feeling in it. "Hey, Bonnie." Whitson stepped a little closer, reaching out to him. Bonnie looked back up, seeing the cautious concern in Whitson's cherry-pink eyes. "Look at me. You're all right. Take a deep breath for me, okay?" Bonnie did, though the puff of air was trembling as much as the rest of him was. Freddy rubbed his shoulder, whispering reassurances to him. "Just thinking about that scared you?" Whitson prodded. Bonnie swallowed and nodded. "Okay, that's all right. That's to be expected," Whitson said, not carrying any frustration like Bonnie had been afraid of. "We don't have to go all the way and have him leave for hours at a time or anything. We're just going to take baby steps for now, all right?" Bonnie nodded. "You need to tell me. Are you okay with that?" Whitson asked again. Yeah," Bonnie said, his voice cracking. Yeah, sure." Whitson stepped back to give them some room, telling them, "Okay, I want to try this exercise with you two." They did as they were shown, staying linked together by the hand as they stood in the middle of the room. Bonnie appreciated the lack of pain from that movement, but the stability of his new body would not really help him with what was about to come. "I just want to gauge your limits so we can get an idea of what we're dealing with here," Whitson explained. "Baby steps. We can stop any time that you want, Bonnie. The whole purpose of this is to see what you're okay with, so we have a baseline to work up from. Do you understand?" He nodded. "Okay, we're going to start by, well, you're going to let go of each other's hands." Bonnie and Freddy exchanged a nervous glance. Bonnie was leaning against Freddy like they were both part of one bigger machine, holding hands without really thinking about it. "You can still stand next to each other," Whitson reminded him. "I just want you to not be touching each other for now. Do you think that's okay?" "Yeah, I guess." Bonnie tried to smooth over this, telling his body to simply release his grip and step away. But instead, his wrist and knuckles locked up. Coldness thrummed through his wires, feeling Freddy glancing down at him with concern while Bonnie just stared straight ahead and did nothing. Let go. He just had to let go. The thrumming in his wires was building, pounding through his entire chest cavity. You're not letting go of him forever. Whitson stepped into his gaze, telling him, Freddy is still going to be right here in the room with you. Do you think that you can let go for just a little bit? Bonnie took in a breath through his nose and exhaled through his mouth. It's okay. I'm not going anywhere, Freddy reminded him gently. You can do it. Bonnie felt his ears folding back in embarrassment. He shouldn't have to have the two of them encouraging him to do this like a child about to try riding a bike for the first time. He pushed that thought away and focused on unraveling his fingers from Freddy's, their arms sliding and then pulling away from each other, Freddy's lovely warmth replaced by cold emptiness. Bonnie was doing okay for the first few seconds. He was still staring up at Freddy, bringing his hands close to his chest, trying to fight the urge to begin picking at his newly fixed ears. But then his fingers began to itch, his arms twitching for just a moment before they were snatched back against his chest. Keeping his mouth closed didn't make his breathing any less heavy, the pressure spreading through his mechanical inner workings as it became harder and harder to stay in place. He could smell the rust faintly, the sound of scraping and scrambling old parts, sending an involuntary shiver up the back of his neck. The whole time, Freddy was just standing there, ears pressed back and eyes more worried than ever, sensing how horrible this was for him. Had to hold him, had to feel him there beside him. He couldn't go back, he couldn't go back, he couldn't go back. Bonnie, look at me, Whitson called to him, making a part of the fog disperse. This is a panic attack. There is not any real danger. Freddy is not leaving you. You're safe. We're going to take 3 deep breaths, okay? Bonnie tried to take in a breath, but it was more of a gasp. He exhaled shakily, still wringing his hands. I'm safe. Freddy is still right there, see? He's right there. All of this fear, all of this terror, it's just a reaction to your trauma. That doesn't make it any less real, but it's not going to actually put you in harm's way. Deep breaths, deep breaths. Even though Bonnie felt like he was barely keeping his head above the floodwaters, he found it in himself to stay on his side of the room. He wasn't sure if he would be able to do it for much longer, but it made Freddy's comet blue eyes sparkle, his ears lifting slightly. Right when Bonnie felt like things were leveling out, Whitson said, All right, do you think you're going to be okay? Yeah. Do you think you can move a little further apart? Like maybe he can be outside the room? That immediately knocked Bonnie back down into doom. Oh dear, I saw your eyes go huge there. Whitson laughed anxiously, then said, I won't close the door or anything. The door can be left open. He'll just be standing outside where you can still see him. Bonnie felt a little ridiculous, but being aware of that didn't stop the electric terror from crackling through his wires. His arms twitched again, and he took a wobbling step towards Freddy before pulling himself back, turning his head to the floor. Breathe in and out. In, out. I'm not in danger. He's not going to leave. I'm not going back. Bonnie? He opened his eyes again, seeing Freddy timidly standing next to the door, which was already opened. Is this okay? No, something cried in him. No, come back! Again, Bonnie almost staggered at the flare of hatred that flattened those thoughts. Seriously? What is wrong with you? What, you want Freddy to spend every waking moment for the rest of his life babysitting you? That is not the role of a spouse. You're being stupid. You're being toxic. He covered his face, breathing through his nose. Bonnie nodded. Footsteps. Freddy was moving further. You could feel it. Bonnie peeked open one eye, then lowered his hands, taking in the new sight. Freddy was standing outside of the room. He was still watching him intently for any signs to stop the exercise, but he was so far away. It felt silly how badly his body was reacting to that. His arms kept jerking forwards, his fingers locked up tight and digging into the backs of his hands, teetering forward and then pulling back. He couldn't get enough air into his tanks, the temperature beneath his shell roasting him alive, panic knocking around in his head like an out-of-control jet plane. The rust, the scraping, The sounds in the dark. He would never forget the sounds of them fighting over his mangled remains while he lied there, unable to fight back, alone, all alone. Bonnie, Freddy had to remind him, I'm still here. Look at me, I'm still here. I'm sorry, Bonnie whimpered, rubbing at his flickering eyes. No, it's okay, just keep breathing. You know the drill, Freddy said. Is this too much, Bonnie? Whitson asked. No, Bonnie insisted. No, I can do more. What's next? He tried to arrange himself into something more collected, forcing his hands to ball up at his sides and his mouth to worm around into something that hopefully resembled a confident smile. They watched him for a few seconds longer, then exchanged a glance. Eventually, Whitson said, Okay then, next I'm gonna close the door. Bonnie held his breath, nodding for him to go ahead. I'll still be in here with you, Whitson reassured him, but are you sure this is... Yes, Bonnie insisted, trying not to react to the feeling of rust grating against his shell. Okay, just say something if it's too much, Whitson said. There's no shame in stopping. This is just a test to see what you're comfortable with. Yeah. Whitson put his hand on the door, waiting for Bonnie to say something. When he didn't, he slowly slid it closed with a quiet clunk. Bonnie was left just staring at that door, battered by a hailstorm of fear. Freddy was gone. His hands twitched, reached. He tried to pull himself back, the same frustration returning. Freddy wasn't gone. He was still there. He was still on the other side of the door. He had a grasp on object permanence, for goodness sake. But then, why was he so afraid to not be able to see him? His warmth, his protection and strength, all of it was gone. Bonnie was alone all over again. Yes, Whitson was in the room, but it was becoming harder and harder to see him past the flashes of darkness. It was dark. It was so dark down there, and the sounds that they made in that darkness, the sounds of them accepting him into the fold, the sounds of being torn and ripped and pulled apart piece by piece, feeling more and more junk pile up on top of him as he sank down into the pit, trapped by his own body and yet kept alive by the cord attached to the back of his head. Why did they keep him alive? What did he ever do to deserve all of that? He was alone. He was completely alone in Freddy's room, cold and empty and alone. You would never see him again. You would never hear his voice again. You would never... Bonnie, are you doing okay? He couldn't force a single word out. He was breathing so hard he was getting lightheaded, frozen there in the coils of rust, nearly crippled with helplessness. And then the door was flung open. The moment Freddy saw the state Bonnie was in, he rushed back into the room, hitting his head on the doorframe on the way in. All at once, Bonnie was swept up into his embrace, dragging him up out of the sucking, steaming gunk that had become his thoughts so that he could actually process what was going on in the present moment. He gasped for air, shaking so bad Freddy seemed to think that it was necessary to lower both of them down to the floor. Bonnie clung to him while he rubbed his back and whispered that he was all right, he was safe, he wouldn't leave him again. Can we stop? Freddy pleaded, speaking over Bonnie's shoulder to Whitson. Please, it's upsetting him. Bonnie shuddered, shriveling up even further. He couldn't see Whitson right now since he was nestled in Freddy's shoulder, but he could imagine the disappointment that he was feeling for him right now. Of course, we can stop, Whitson said, surprising Bonnie completely. I wasn't quite sure if closing the door was a good idea. I'm sorry, Bonnie. If you didn't think that you could handle it, you could have just told me. You're always allowed to tell me no. By now, Bonnie had pulled away from Freddy, turning to look over his shoulder at Whitson with his mouth gaped open. He was searching Whitson for any hint of restrained irritation, but he only found a growing look of confusion when Whitson saw his face. Why aren't you mad? Bonnie asked. Whitson blinked several times, taking a step back. Mad? Why would I be mad? I failed again, Bonnie cried. All of the stuff that I've been practicing for the past few weeks just failed. No, you haven't failed. Whitson kneeled down, cautious to not get too close. You haven't been failing. You've been doing really good. I couldn't handle being away from Freddy for more than 30 seconds, Bonnie burst out, his throat contracting around each word. How is that not a failure? That is pathetic. I'm completely pathetic. I mean, just look at what I'm doing to Freddy. He's been having to take care of me 24/7 for weeks now, and I haven't gotten even a little bit better in that time. It's not working. I'm going to be stuck like this forever. Even though he absolutely hated that Freddy had to do this for him, he was grateful when he hugged him close, letting him break down into unintelligible sobs. But the thing Bonnie feared the most was that there was nothing Freddy could actually do to make it go away this time. Every time Bonnie tired himself out enough to slow down, he would only remember the crushing weight of what was happening to him and start crying all over again, everything in the entire world seeming to converge inwards on him all at once, trapping him. Bonnie, I'm sorry that you're hurting like this, Freddy was telling him, but please, try and take deep breaths. You need to... Breathing won't help, Bonnie choked out. I'm going to be like this forever! No, that's not true, Freddy told him, rubbing his shoulders to try and soothe him. I promise it's not true. Your brain is just playing tricks on you, remember? You know that it does things like this. It starts filling you up with all of these horrible thoughts, and it's scary. It's so scary, but it's not going to last. Bonnie whimpered, clinging to him like a lifeline and listening as Freddy tried to guide him out. You can't think clearly while you're like this. We need to get away from all of these thoughts first. Then we can talk about how to fix this, okay? We'll be able to figure out how to help you in just a second, but you need to breathe with me, just so we can calm you down a little. Half of Bonnie was still being suffocated beneath the avalanche of emotion, completely lost and no longer seeing any point at all of fighting it. Still, the rest of him didn't want everything Freddy had done for him to be for nothing. In a routine that he was fairly sick of following, Bonnie breathed in and out, even though it was more than strenuous to follow Freddy's lead. His body kept trying to sabotage him as he forced the air in and out, his throat snapping shut in spastic jerks, the mechanisms in his chest kicking at his sides and stomach, trying to force more sobs out of him. The struggle kept going on, with him sucking in a breath and then trying to control it as it slipped its way back out. But slowly it helped ground him to the moment, quieting him down enough that he could listen. You're not failing, Bonnie. Nothing that you've been doing is anywhere close to failing, Whitson told him. How? Bonnie whispered. You're still here, Whitson replied easily. You're here, and you're still trying, Bonnie. What you went through, there's not many people in this world that have gone through as much psychological trauma as you've gone through. I did not sign up for this thinking that it would all be done and over with in a week. That's why you've been taking baby steps. This is the only thing that we were going to do today. We were just going to see if you were alright with being physically separated from him, and then we were going to build from there. I was not going to be upset if you couldn't stay apart from him with the door closed. I frankly only did that because you said that you wanted to try. But you've been doing good. Really, really good. You might not be seeing any progress, but I am. You've broken down before, but that's completely expected. I can't stress enough to you how expected it is that you would be damaged like this. The fact that you're still alive and you're still here just trying to get better is more than I was daring to hope for at the beginning of this. The lights in Bonnie's eyes finally steadied, staring down at the floor in a haze of fatigue. Getting better is going to take a long, long time. It's going to be hard. It's going to be really, really hard on you. But I think you're going to be able to do it. It doesn't have to happen right now. None of us are expecting for it to go away in a couple of days. Mine lasted... Whitson halted, catching himself. He seemed to think over what he was about to say, reaching to touch the silver locket that he always wore around his neck. Can I tell you something about myself? Whitson asked. I don't want to make this all about me, but I feel like I could connect my experience with yours. Sure. Bonnie rubbed his face, the two of them listening patiently. My mom saved my life after a terrifying experience with a person who I had been divorcing at the time, Whitson explained, brushing his thumb lightly over the locket. And I couldn't leave my mom's side for about 8 months, even once I got out of the hospital. Bonnie's eyes immediately fixated on the light pink scar sliced across the right side of Whitson's neck. He had noticed it, decided that it was none of his business, and never asked about it. Even after she recognized the problem and started trying to get me therapy for it, it took about 2 years to live a day where I wasn't following her around in her schedule. He seemed to shake off the memories. I don't want to compare my experience to yours exactly, but what I'm saying is that I understand how this feels. I know that it makes you feel ridiculous and ashamed or even childish at times, but there is definitely a cure. It might take a while for it to work, but it will work. I promise you that. Bonnie loosened his hold on Freddy, the weight on his shoulders lessening slightly. It didn't completely lift, but it was a little easier to carry. I don't think we're going to do any more of that exercise today, Whitson went on. Since you're only really able to have him outside of the room for a minute or two, that's all we're going to do. Every morning we're going to do that exercise again. Maybe start doing it more than one time a day, and once you're comfortable with it, we can start moving up. But you don't have to do anything that you're not okay with. If you really feel like we're going too fast, you just need to tell us, and we'll slow down for you. All right? All right. Whitson seemed to think for a moment, his tongue passing over his lips as he blinked up at the ceiling. I have another idea, he said. A method that I used to help with my separation anxiety was the locket. He held it up so they could see. I put a picture of my mother inside, so near the beginning when things were really rough without her, I would be able to look down and see her and remind myself that she wasn't very far away, and I'll be able to see her again once I got back home. Maybe we could find something like that for you. Bonnie's mind immediately landed on an item before retracting, then reassuring himself that it might actually work. He reached up and touched one of his floppy rabbit ears, finding the accessory that was slightly larger than the others. What about the earrings? Bonnie suggested. Freddy reached to his own ear, touching his singular earring, the one that matched Bonnie's. Both of them were small lavender stone, dropped from a simple golden hoop, with Bonnie sporting the right one of the pair and Freddy sporting the left one. Well, originally these are both yours, Freddy reminded him, turning to briefly explain to Whitson. He gave me one of his earrings whenever we made us official, since it's not like we could have a real wedding in the Pizzaplex. Oh, maybe we can work with that, Whitson said. What if you switch rings? Switch? Well, if it's already official for you guys, Whitson shrugged, maybe if you trade rings, they can work as an item to remind you of each other. It'll be impossible to tell the difference, so nobody else will end up asking too many questions, but the meaning behind it could be enough. Sure then, Bonnie agreed. Let's try that. Both Bonnie and Freddy undid the clasps on the lavender earrings, holding the tiny accessories carefully in their palms like they would shatter into a million pieces from a single fumble. They both hesitated for a moment, staring down at their own rings, the attachments to the simple little items only made clear to them now. Freddy had never stopped wearing his in the 5 years that they were apart, and Bonnie hadn't taken his out either, not even when Vanessa saved him from the pit. Even though both of them were originally meant just to decorate Bonnie's design, he really did see the other one as Freddy's now. The thought of that helped them trade, attaching the new earrings on each of their ears. Even once it was locked in place, Bonnie's fingers never left the golden hoop. It was warm and filling him with peace. If that's not quite enough, we can try something else, Whitson said from beyond their connection. But let's just try this one out for now and see how things go. Freddy offered him a tired smile, and Bonnie couldn't help but give him one back. They exchanged a gentle, quiet kiss, and Bonnie lowered his head back down to Freddy's chest, listening to the deep thumps of his inner mechanisms pumping away to keep him alive and holding him. Okay, do you think that's enough for today? Whitson asked, standing back up and readjusting the jacket around his waist. Yeah. Bonnie laughed a little, still a bit shaken up by the whole experience. Yeah, I think I want to go do something else now. We can go check on the others, Freddy suggested, helping Bonnie to his feet. We could play another round of Uno, try and level the score. Bonnie felt a little funny from the eagerness swelling up inside of him. It was less of an excitement for Uno and more of an excitement for some form of normalcy. Yeah, that sounds good. Maybe we can even get Monty to play this time. Maybe, Freddy said. The three of them left Freddy's room behind, moving on to complete their morning routine. Woo! Another chapter has been sent out on time. So, guess what, guys? I have great news. It has absolutely nothing to do with the video, but I got a job! I can't tell you what I work for because otherwise it would seem like I'm trying to represent them on my social media or whatever, but I am employed! Yay! I am employed! Yay, it's fun. I'm excited. So, anyway, things that actually have to do with the episode. Thank you for watching. Please remember to like and comment about your favorite part. It doesn't have to be a super extravagant comment. It can literally just be like an emoji. All that I really need is just engagement for the algorithm, So, remember to do that. Thank you very much. It really, really helps me out, and I'm very, very grateful for all of your participation and all your support. I love it. Thank you very much. So, the next episode, as long as everything goes all right, like it did this week, it should come out in 2 weeks. So, hopefully we're gonna just keep on chugging along and continuing to get this out. We're actually kind of coming up to the end, sort of. We're like over halfway through if you were to only count the epilogue. So, we're good. I think that's about it. Yeah, okay, that's it. Bye, guys. I'm really excited right now because of the job thing, but I'm kind of scatterbrained, so that's it. Bye, guys. Thank you so much for all your support. I love you guys. See you not next week, in 2 weeks. Bye. Thank you.